this piece is now the right consistency, and I'm going to show this a little bit more because I think I'll be able to show a little bit more of the back and forth. After I started this project, I realized these weren't going to be some of the greatest examples of embossing or cutting techniques just because of what they look like, but we'll show what we can, and then I'll probably add other pieces and things from other projects I'm working on just to show different techniques. Again, the first thing I'm going to do is rub it or kind of bend it against my table here, because what that does is it just kind of allows me to do a big overall shape to the leg and foot. I'm just kind of rolling it across here. Not the greatest thing for my table, seeing as it's got a wood finish, but it has bigger issues than that going on. I'm just kind of shaping it to give it some overall kind of dimension. And this time I have some critical lines indicated in pencil from when I had drawn it before. So I'm going to use those to go in and do a little of my embossing. And remember, I'm going to work from the outside or from the inside embossing areas, and then my last thing is going to be curving the shape on the outside. So this is the ankle bone. I want to really indicate that. And I'm going to push down pretty hard to have it come out. And part of what you have to be thinking is the opposite. Because I'm on the back side and I want it to come out, I have to push down. It's a little tricky, I guess, when you're first getting started, but I think you get used to it. Then I come back on the same area and I push down on the opposite side, or not the opposite side, but now I'm pushing down, making it go in from the top side so that I'm building that bump. And again, how you light it helps you see what's there. And sometimes I'll turn off the extra light source if I'm really not being able to see what I want to. And I'm using my bigger embossing tool here because this is a pretty big area. If without these tools, you could go in with something like this and kind of go on the side. You can also use one of the big balls to go in. You want to kind of smooth it out because otherwise you will see a line. But since I'm fortunate enough to have these tools, I'll use my tools. And there's a certain level that you're going to get, and past that you're not going to get anymore. Then I'm also going to go in and indicate some of these kind of, I guess, fold lines in the foot. They're much more prominent from this side, but by indicating there, I'm going to turn this off because I really can't see. And sometimes I will use, there's a 1mm ball tool, and I'll get a much sharper line. It's almost like I'm drawing with the embossing. And then when I turn it over, I can see where that is better. And I don't know if it'll show up on the video, but now you're getting some finer lines. You've got this big area, but you've got some finer lines around it. And then once I have that, I can go back in and go up to the fine line and just kind of raise that area a bit. So that's mainly what embossing is going back and forth. There are also patterns that you do in the embossing that I will show in some photographs of another piece I was working on about the same time. And now I'll just be quiet and just keep looking so that I can speed up the video. this is really, really stiff paper. I don't know if it's not wet enough or if it's just sometimes when you have two pieces that's a little bit heavier to begin with, but this is really, really stiff. And as I'm trying to curve the edges, I'm getting it where it's kind of breaking down. So what I'm going to do is put it back in my wet paper towel. It shouldn't lose the embossing that's there, or at least I can probably pull it back out fairly easily. But I'm really having to work my hands to get it to do anything more than I would know normally, and that's just a matter of experience. So I'm going to make sure that these particular pieces are wetter than maybe what I would normally start with, because they're being very, very tough to emboss. Usually it doesn't, usually it's not quite me pushing quite that hard to get it to do what I want it to do. So I'm going to let those get a little wetter. While I let that get wetter again, I went ahead and embossed the other leg, so you can see a little bit of that. It's got a little bit more depth in the foot because you're looking on the inside of the foot, and so you want to see the arch and the base of the foot again. So by having it sit there, we lost some of the bigger shapes. We still have some of the embossing, so I'm just going to go ahead and kind of form that again. Sometimes as it's drying, people will weight theirs down. I don't very often do that, probably because by the time I've worked the piece, it's not near as wet anymore. But you do want to have it laying about how you want it in the picture. There's some things we can do with gluing it down that will account for a little bit of it, but you want it looking about what you want it in the picture. So we're going to pump up some of those areas we've lost a little bit. So obviously by showing you this, you want to work in pieces too, because if you have to stop in between, you do lose some of what you've done, even if you put it back under the paper towels. The edges are going much easier this time. I feel like I'm breaking my hand doing them. So now we have the embossed forms of both legs and feet.